I think the turning point is the moment when they both realized that the conflict should be resolved, and they both realized that the major rival is the one to the north. So I think it's a turning point.
Hello again and welcome. I'm Dr. Joanne Lisosky, journalist and journalism educator. Today I'm joined by Leila Aliyeva, an associate at Oxford University, Russian and East European Studies, and we're here to discuss the more recent issues in the South Caucasus. Leila, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So recently we have seen signs that Azerbaijan and Armenia are now more open to direct dialogue. How do you interpret this change?
Well, it's a very substantial change. I think there were a few factors which contributed to that. And I think first and foremost is a failure of negotiations, which has been a status quo being supported for 25 years with no progress whatsoever. The second factor is the change of the power balance in the region, with some actors becoming more and more independent, and the like Azerbaijan diversifying its allies, especially in military sphere, as well as regional actors like Turkey also conducting its more independent and proactive policies in the region. And the other factor is the significant domestic changes in Armenia. The changes, the arrival to power of Pashinyan, who totally changes the security paradigm of Armenia. And I think altogether, promoted the greater maturity of the actors and the parties to the conflict, greater maturity combined with greater independence as actors of international relations.
So, for years, the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan has blocked any kind of development in both of these countries. Do you see the current dialogue as being driven by a shared vision for moving beyond that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are, of course, various obstacles. Like, in a sense, states got adjusted to the status quo. They developed their own other sort of alternative relations. But the problem is that the status quo now is perceived by both parties as a serious obstacle on the way of development, progress, and prosperity in both states. And I think I think they both share a vision of the future for the region. Mainly, I call it the process decolonization in the region, particularly in Armenia, because in Azerbaijan this process started earlier, in the early 90s, when the first president of Azerbaijan got rid of all the Soviet troops from the territory of Azerbaijan and took very strict position towards Russia. And now the very similar sort of vision, I think, is shared in Armenia. So they both view secessionist conflict, first the one which was in Karabakh, as the main instrument of the former empire, who was using it to either keep control over the whole region or just keep it permanently under the conflictual condition.
So, we've seen a shift in the regional balance of power that you talked about just a minute ago. Has this shaped this opening for peace?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. So, in a sense, that sounds like paradox, but on the one hand, there was a weakening of Russia because Russia was distracted by its war in Ukraine. So Russia was becoming less an actor in the region. The other thing is that withdrawal of the US, by the way, US oil companies also withdrew a few years ago when they finished a sort of commercial operations there. Europe also was not very active in this conflict resolution. So I think besides these changes, the region also saw new actors like China. So China became an actor, uh, and of course Turkey, as I mentioned, also became more independent actor, not only in the Middle East but also in the Caucasus.
So talk a little bit more about Turkey's role in this region evolving. How does it differ from that of Russia or Iran?
Mhm. Well, one should not forget that basically Turkey has always been striving to become a part of European Union. It is member of NATO, and I think it has always seen itself as part of European community and Euro-Atlantic community too. One should not also forget about that there is a greater degree of democracy compared to, for instance, Russia or China, although we know that there is some, problems with democracy in Turkey. They've been increasing with time, but again, the Turkey as an actor is qualitatively is different from China or Russia. And that means that Turkey cares about its reputation in the West, and Turkey cares about its sort of role as being viewed as a sort of someone who brings peace to the region. Um, yeah, I think that Turkey is sort of trying to establish itself, but also not to lose its generally positive image as a more civilized actor than the other two.
So do we see the relationship between Turkey and Armenia um, developing into something that could benefit both countries and bring some economic integration and also help Azerbaijan? I mean, I see Turkey and Armenia possibly making, especially in their transit routes. Are we seeing a really interesting relationship developing there?
Oh, yeah, that was the attempt to develop this relationship even in the early 90s. There were a lot of projects which will bring together Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Turkey, or Armenia and Turkey. And I think there were both, on both sides, there were very interested sort of parties or stakeholders in starting the relationship between the two. But there was the major obstacle that was the Karabakh conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So Azerbaijan and Turkey cared about Azerbaijan's concern that before the sovereignty of Azerbaijan is restored, they cannot be relationship with Armenia. But I think one's major obstacle to these relations is already removed. I think we have a really very bright prospects of the relationship opening the borders relationship between Armenia and Turkey, and particularly with this new also the corridor, which is called the Trump corridor, what is called. So,
The trip, yes.
yes, true, yeah.
So, what about the rest of the smaller states in the South Caucasus? What lessons do you think that they can take from Russia's decline, as you said, as a dominant power?
It is accompanied by sort of ambiguity because when this war started in Ukraine, when Russia started this large scale aggression against Ukraine, I think the states in the region, small states in the region, made the conclusion that you should actually balance the relationship with all actors, because if you take one-sided position or make your choice towards one of the power centers, the other one may be very irritated, and you can be punished for that. And the problem is that you will be alone vis-a-vis that party. And Europe and the US didn't show much sort of enthusiasm in either closing the skies or joining the troops on the ground. So that was the lesson, first lesson, which the countries learned. And you can tell that Georgia was sort of being maneuvering in a sort of slightly different direction towards Russia. And Azerbaijan also did not cut the relationship immediately with Russia or try to balance its relations. So in a sense, that was the first reaction. But I think with time, and particularly with the arrival of Trump, the countries became more confident about, taking more strict position, like we see it with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is now sort of behaving with greater confidence vis-a-vis Russia. And I think, as I said, it's most importantly, it's the reflection of the changed power balance that, it's not Russia only, who, as it used to be, who was the king in the castle, or what they say. There is China, there is Turkey, and now, there is awakening in the traditional ally of Russia, like Armenia. It was only almost 200 years when Russia was using Armenians to colonize the Muslim peripheries of its empire. And so it's changing. So I think it's very significant transformation.
So, talk to me a little bit more about your idea of reparational cost, um, or reputational costs. How have the people in the region been affected by aligning too closely? I think that's what you're meaning. It's aligning too closely with one powerful actor. That's the
Yeah.
reputational costs, right?
Yeah, I think it's reputational cost, but there is a dynamic to that. And I think if you look now, particularly now, when Russia is losing tremendously in the international arena as an actor, with its horrible, destructive war. On the one hand, on the other hand, you have Trump, who came up with this great idea that, we should not have military wars, we should have trade wars, or we should have deals. So there is a huge contrast between the two. And it also removed the tension which existed in the relationship between the US and some countries in the region, because of the normative component or political component that, with democracy and values. Now it's removed. So it makes this cooperation with America much easier. And America got an advantage as compared to Russia, and now the states in the region can eat more easier to associate themselves with Trump easier than before. So it becomes more and more pragmatic, this type of cooperation. And on the other hand, as I said, states are now quite concerned with the reputational costs, because they observe what's happening to Russia's status, Russia's role, and reputation as a country due to the war.
Reputation seems to be important these days. Finally, do you see this current moment as a real turning point in the South Caucasus? A shift toward maybe more agency, diversification, balance? What do you think?
I think the turning point is the moment when they both realized that the conflict should be resolved, and they both realized that the major rival is the one to the north. So I think it's a turning point. The other very significant development is that they decided to get rid of all the moderators, which is also very interesting, because we know that any moderator, at least the ones who were participating before, they would bring their interests in the process. So I think the second idea, which is quite prominent at this stage, is that they decided to talk to each other directly. And Trump basically joined the process at the later stages with his rather pragmatic idea, of having this trip. But the process was going on. I think it was maturing from inside. And I think both leaders now are aware of the necessity of being more independent as actors of international relations.